Now, your Ford Sports Desk.
Well, even though the Mets roster hasn't changed a great deal, this offseason has been a wild one. It includes 2 new managers, a team sale that fell through, and a wild boar. Here to make sense of what this means for spring training, we bring in the Mets beat reporter for the New York Daily News, Deesha Thosar, joins us in studio. Deesha, great to have you in studio for the first time.
Great to be here.
And boy, what a wild offseason it's been here for the Mets. But I still want to start things off with a sale that fell through. This is the second time the Mets have had a deal that fell through in the 11th hour. And Commissioner Rob Manfred even released a statement saying that to blame this on the Wilpons would be quote unquote unfair. How do you read that?
Well, I thought his choice of words were definitely interesting because he didn't say untrue, he said unfair. So all of the reports, at least, that were swarming around everything that happened, is it the Wilpons that changed the terms? Was it Cohen that changed the terms? We still don't know exactly what happened. But for Manfred to come out and completely defend the Wilpons was, I thought, interesting.
Yeah, now, obviously, the Wilpons have had a deal that fell through with Einhorn back in 2011. Yes. They got money from Major League Baseball, $25 million bonus, if you will, for Major League Baseball loan that they had to pay back as well. And now here they are. Does it feel like they're in financial straits once again if they're reaching out and they want an owner, a new owner, to pay $2.6 billion, only own 80% of the club, and not actually run it for 5 years?
Right. Well, that's actually what it comes down to, right? It's like, are they in a rush to get this done? Because if that's the case, then they would be in a financial struggle. But again, we won't know completely the technicalities of that. But if they want someone to sign on and pay for them while they keep in control, it sounds like they have other plans up their sleeve.
Yeah. How likely do you think that is, that you'll be able to find someone that has that kind of money?
It's definitely hard
here in New York that wants to own the Mets and to agree to all of those terms.
Right. Well, that's possibly what happened with Cohen. It's that, was he willing to just pay them however much to make them the highest valued team in MLB and then step out of the picture completely and let them continue running the franchise? Or would an owner, whoever they're looking for next, would want to step in and also have some say about what's going to happen? Or
does it feel like there could be somebody in the Mets organization that is almost kind of throwing a monkey wrench into the plans and almost preventing this sale from happening?
Yeah, it could be that as well. I mean, I know for sure that Jeff Wilpon definitely wants to remain in control for the next 5 years. So does Fred. That was what was under the original agreement with Cohen, but it didn't come to fruition. So whoever signs on next will have to agree to their terms, whether that's them staying in control for however long while the next person steps out, or they'll have to work with whoever the next person is. So at least they're working with an investment bank now who should help them move the process along a little smoothly.
Yeah, third party at the very least. Their hands will be clean of it, and the blame at least won't land on the Mets. But there is a news story that says the Mets were actually in the market for some big-name talent this offseason. We heard Starling Marte at the beginning of the offseason. Just recently now, they could have been in the market for Francisco Lindor. Does this suggest that the Mets thought the Cohen deal was going to go through and that they could open up their purse strings sooner than later?
Exactly. Well, especially if this deal was as public as it was going to be, and everyone knows Cohen's background and how much he's worth. Forbes actually reported that he's worth in the $13 billion range, which would make him the highest paid owner in MLB. So if that was the case, I think they would definitely expect him to help out and get some of those pricier free agents. But now here we are, starting from square one.
Okay, well, yeah, here we are. How much of the situation that the Mets currently find them in rests on the shoulders of General Manager Brodie Van Wagenen?
Right. Well, I think that's it. The target is going to be on his back, because regardless of how they do this year, it's going to be, what is this GM doing to help them along? Because now we're back in this position. The Mets don't have those purse strings open, so he definitely has to get creative, which is what he did again last season, to help them kind of move along.
All right, so given Brodie's connection to A.J. Hinch, doesn't it seem reasonable to believe that he would have known more about Carlos Beltran's involvement with the Astros?
Well, yes, we definitely asked him. Multiple reporters asked Brodie if that was the case, especially on a conference call when everything was wrapping up and they officially dismissed Carlos Beltran. And I asked Brodie if he spoke to A.J. Hinch after he was dismissed by the Astros, and he didn't elaborate, but the only thing he said was yes, and we already know that they are very close friends, went to Stanford together, so it's more of a question of how tight are they and how tight is AJ Hinch still perceived in the league to return to a potential spot like a managerial role? People are saying that it's still possible because AJ Hinch is definitely very liked in the league, but for him to completely forget about the scandal and just it wouldn't pop up again is, I think, unreasonable.
So now it's Luis Rojas who gets to pick up the pieces. He's certainly well-liked in the clubhouse, but I guess he's really more of an unknown commodity in baseball at this point, right?
Well, most first-year managers that I would say they would need to at least manage a big league game, a few, to see how they will actually be. But his resume is amazing. So if everything that he's learned so far, especially from his father, his father's Felipe Alou, he comes from a big baseball royalty family, and he's just one of those people that soaks information in, takes it all for what it's worth, and then applies. So if he's able to do that, remain the same guy that he is when he was the quality control coach, when he was managing in the minor leagues, he should be fine in the big leagues. But again, we wouldn't know until it happens.
UNS Cespedes, what an offseason for him. So he renegotiated a deal, a very team-friendly deal that was very incentives-laden. And then the story comes out that he injured himself with because he got attacked by a wild boar.
Yes, he had an altercation with a wild boar.
Boy, that's just, the headline just pretty much writes itself at that point.
It does. I mean, it's yeah.
So what is really expected out of Cespedes this year?
Well, he's been releasing some of his own hype videos, and they're working out. He's batting. He's running. He's doing all these activities that we haven't seen from Cespedes in years. So it's more of will we know how much he can provide? Now, there was just a report that came out actually earlier today that he might be putting in some work at first base this year, because that's another thing. It's the National League, so he can't just DH the way that he could if he was playing for someone like the Yankees or anyone else in the AL. So he would have to, his agility would need to be just as good in the outfield as it is at the plate. So if it's not, and he's not ready for that, then maybe the Mets would consider putting him at first base.
Well, or what are the chances that he doesn't even play a game this season in a Mets uniform?
That could also be true, but he has a lot to work for. I actually, at this point, I don't think that that's even a scenario, just because if he doesn't play, his contract would significantly go up if he was to appear in a major league game. So
he's highly motivated to get out there, more or less, right?
He can at the most come to the plate, strike out, and keep getting paid more. So if we could all do that, I think it would serve us best. But I think he might show up in a big league game.
You also wrote about the 6 starters scenario. Is it a better chance that we're going to see one of those guys go into the pen, or is there a possibility of a 6-man rotation?
I think that is going to be one of the more interesting stories of this spring training, because that's where most of the rotation and bullpen gets decided. So I think right now, with the 6-man rotation, you have DeGrom, Syndergaard, Stroman, Matz, Porcello, Waka.
And now Waka,
and I think definitely between the last 3, it's going to be between Matz, Porcello, and Waka, deciding which one of those will go into the bullpen. And I mean, all 3 of them, which is interesting, have said that they're going to be starters. That's all that they've heard from the Mets, and they're starters. That's all they've been their entire careers. So there's no reason for them to think they'll be in the bullpen. So it will definitely be interesting to see how they perform in spring training and which one will kind of be the odd man out.
A scenario that will likely play out because the Mets have taken a peek at what they've got in the minor leagues, and those guys are not major league ready. But I guess we'll find out, because you're about ready to head down to Port St. Lucie for a few weeks and enjoy the warm weather and get out of the snow up here. So we wish you the best of luck down there. And if you want to get all of her insights from spring training and the season, check out New York Daily News. Deesha Thosar, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. All right.